So I once lived in a neighborhood with a specific house down the street that had heavy reinforced metal security blinds that came down over every window. Access was entirely controlled and it was a very private residence. By all appearances, the people inside were prepared. Not only did they have the blinds, but they also had cameras on the outside. So it was really easy to jump to the conclusion that they likely had supplies and preparations for every single worst-case scenario. But they were also completely closed off. There was zero interaction with the neighborhood. I never met them, no connection. And the message, whether they said it out loud or not, was loud and clear. Welcome to the Fearless Household. I am Michelle. So a house like that gives a message that they are taking full responsibility for their household and their household only. There's nothing really warm and inviting about that house. So then we all just keep our distance, and the fear on both sides of the fence grows because we all become unknowns to each other. There is a quiet side effect to the preparedness world that nobody really likes to talk about. When you start to take responsibility for your home and your family, it usually comes from a good place. You want stability and you want to be a good steward. But then if you zoom out far enough and you look at how most people actually execute it, there's a dangerous pattern that shows up. Preparedness slowly shifts from something that builds security and stability into something that quietly builds separation. And on one level, we get it, right? I mean, it's pretty understandable. The world is changing really fast and it feels volatile. But consider what happens to a neighborhood relationally when that mindset starts to creep in. People stop talking and they stop checking in. They stop assuming that they're part of something shared. When fear enters the picture, it actually alters how we look at other human beings. And instead of seeing your neighbors as a shared support system, you start seeing them as uncertainty. You start seeing them as a liability and as a potential risk. So then what do people do? They just pull inward and they prepare alone and they stock up alone and they sit in their living rooms thinking through dark scenarios alone. But here's the absolute truth about a bunker mentality. Fear that becomes private and isolated does not disappear. It actually radiates outward. Everyone in my old neighborhood felt the quiet tension coming from that house with the metal blinds. It didn't bring peace to the neighborhood. It just brought a heavy dose of ambient anxiety. Here is the part that the prepper community sometimes misses, and it is the hill that I will die on. Preparedness that isolates you does not actually make you secure. It makes you incredibly fragile. Think about it logically. If a major long-term crisis hits, the strongest resource that you have is not the inventory written on your pantry shelves. It's who you know. It's who you can call. It's who trusts you enough to show up at your doorstep to help you defend or rebuild. And that level of trust only exists when there is a relationship. And that relationship is usually built before a crisis, not after. You cannot, or at least it's very difficult, to build a network of trust while the grid is blinking out. Scripture gives us a beautiful model for this in the early Christian church. They didn't survive because each family built an isolated fortress. They survived because they cared for one another and they shared resources and they stood as a unified body. So we need to stop asking the question, how do I make sure my individual household is prepared? And the question we must start asking is, how do we build preparedness in a way that strengthens connection instead of replacing it? The goal of the fearless household isn't to turn your home into an isolated, hyper-defensive system. It is to create a household that is steady enough and calm enough and secure enough to contribute to something larger than itself. We want to build communities where neighbors actually know each other, where support isn't a theoretical concept that we just talk about in church, but it's a practical reality, where trust exists long before it is ever needed. That is why we teach the framework of fearless pods. A fearless pod is a micro network of 12 to 24 households, give or take, that choose to collaborate rather than compete. When you join a pod, you stop trying to own and manage every single piece of infrastructure yourself, and you look at the collective talents of the group without comparison. You find the anchor who has the physical space. You find the operator who has the skills. You find the shepherd who coordinates the relationships. And together, you form a system that brings peace and calm, completely erasing the overwhelm. And because we believe in practicing what we preach, we aren't just here to sell you on a philosophy. We actually want to actively invest in this movement. So moving forward, 10% of the gross profit from every premium water purification system that we sell through our partner company is going to go directly into a community fund for the Fearless household. This fund is specifically going to be used to support families who are struggling to fulfill their basic household readiness plans, ensuring that no one is left behind. And we also welcome anyone else who feels led to contribute to this fund to join us, because the reality is we are all in this together. So I want to invite you first off to go to our website and take the stewardship audit if you haven't yet. Discover whether your baseline strength is as an anchor, an operator, or a shepherd. And secondly, I want you to walk outside and just look at your immediate neighbors and identify 3 people that you actually know and trust. And if you don't know 3, that's okay. Then your assignment this week is to just start a conversation with 1. We have to start building the human grid before we ever worry about the power grid, because the strongest communities aren't the ones that avoided difficulty. They're the ones that stayed connected through it. So next time, we are going to look at the ancient scriptural pattern for this exact ecosystem. We're going to be diving into Acts chapter 2 to look at God's radical blueprint for Christian community and how ordinary households become unshakable neighborhoods. Discover a better way at thefearlesshousehold.com. Stop stockpiling and start connecting. I'll see you next time.